as history has unfolded, there's been a sense of individual sovereignty. Like me as a person has my own sovereignty, and I'm not just a member of a group. And I think over history, you can see that that individuality starts to grow. Does that play a role at all in this?
No, I think it does, and that has very much to do with the rise of liberalism in the early
Mhm.
modern era as well. So, for with respect to liberalism is basically tantamount to individualism. The individual really comes to be sovereign. In that kind of a context, it seemed as though the only counterpole to the sovereignty of the individual was the sovereignty of the state. So in liberalism in the early modern era, and really, right up into the 20th, 21st centuries, you have this notion that society is made up of the individual on the one hand and the state on the other. And
Mhm.
in many respects, they're not really opposites, because in many respects, individualism and statism go together. And I think nobody showed this more eloquently than Patrick Deneen did in his book "Why Liberalism Failed," that was
Yeah.
published a few years ago. Brilliant
Okay.
book. I would recommend a reading of that.
Yeah, yeah, I've read it and lots of great
Uh-huh.
insights. So it sounds like what you're saying is the sovereignty of the individual as that developed and after the sovereignty of kingdoms started to shape.
Yeah.
Now you kind of have a third dynamic, which is now you have, I guess, rights, or you have some sort of laws that are a barrier between the individual and the state, essentially protecting the individual from the state, particularly in America, property rights and so on and so forth. Is that a good way to sort of understand that?
Yeah, protection of the individual from the state, but as liberalism progressed over the centuries, the state became how should we say it? The state became a catalyst for an expansion of the rights of individuals.
Hmm.
So in the 1940s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave his speech on four freedoms. The freedom from fear, freedom from want is something that he talked about as well, and that's probably the most memorable one. Freedom
Hmm.
from want is something that the state actually has to intervene in some way to try to guarantee that freedom.